What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the vlog. My name is Filip Latocha. Today, as you can already guess by the title, we are going to be discussing two of the everyday trainers that I have in my lineup right now. That, of course, is the New Balance Fresh Foam 1080 version 11 and the Nike Pegasus Turbo 2. Both highly acclaimed shoes that I do have access to and use pretty regularly and can kind of give you some good 2 cents on it. So before we get into it, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I think I'm like 15 or more subscribers away from 1K subs. It's really close now and I'm excited about it. So please guys, let's make it happen. And of course, if you are already subscribed, watching the content, love you guys very much. Thanks so much for the support. Without further ado, let's get into it. So I'm going to leave the specs for the shoes respectively right here. It'll be pretty cool. But first things first, let's talk about the veteran of this comparison, which is the Nike Pegasus Turbo 2. So this one, of course, on the channel, if you're watching, is a fan favorite from a lot of people. I don't hear any bad things about this shoe. I've used different variations of the shoe multiple times in my running career, whether it was just the existing Pegasus Turbo 1, which I think was like 2017, 2018 that model was out, and then of course the Pegasus Turbo 2, you just had to do it. Except I was late to the party with this one, but I bought the shoe in a different time span and a different website, and well, here we are. So, of course, as you can already see by the specs, it's kind of a mid stack height kind of shoe in the sense that the foam in the forefoot and the heel are kind of low. They're not nearly as like high as something like the ZoomX, Vaporfly X% or the Alphafly in those racing shoes. This is more of kind of a mid-range type of shoe. Of course, with the offset being 10 millimeters, it is quite high, makes it feel almost like a high heel when you're running. But I think that's a pretty good limit for this shoe in particular to get that kind of stride overall, I would say. Of course, as we've discussed multiple times here, it is comprised of 2 different foams here, where on the bottom it is a React, even though it says Nike Zoom on the bottom. Might confuse you for ZoomX. Speaking of ZoomX, that's the top layer of foam here as well, just running all the way across the shoe. And yeah, pretty much very nice design. It's got a great response. It's got a great overall compression and decompression function when you're running and you're either midfoot striker or kind of like a forefoot striker like me. The foam just works in tandem very well with one another. In the upper, of course, it's some kind of hybrid mesh that, of course, a lot of people do like. It is pretty breathable. It's not the most breathable thing in the Nike lineup, but it does do its job just fine. It's very flexible. The forefoot area in the toe box here is a little bit wider than some people might like. Some people do actually really like it if they have slightly larger feet, so it's a complimentary for that, of course. The midfoot area has a great lock with the shoelaces, of course, going with just the tongue more or less running naturally straight across the shoe. It's not really anterior unless you really want it to be, but again, that's just a preference for a lot of people just to keep it straight across. Not a big issue on that front. And then, of course, the major difference between like this shoe and the Pegasus Turbo 1 is that the shoe collar doesn't have nearly as much cushion and pillowing in the surrounding area, which again reduces the comfort level but also keeps this shoe pretty snug on the foot and it keeps it real. And in most cases, like, I don't feel any sort of discomfort in this shoe collar area because I'll wear a sock anyways while I'm running. But again, it like the return in your strike and your decompression or more or less increases the more support you have in this shoe collar area. So making it just like as minimal material as possible, making it as snug as possible, definitely a solid move overall. So I mean, I don't have any bad experiences with this shoe as far as I'm concerned. It's not the fastest shoe in my lineup, obviously, because I have like an Alphafly, an X%, a Tempo X%. This is going to be more of my like everyday to tempo runner type of shoe if the tempo legs are there for that specific day. That's kind of where this shoe stands on my platform of everyday trainers in that specific niche bracket, I would say. So next up, let's talk about the newbie in my lineup, which is the New Balance Fresh Foam 1080 version 11. So the reason, of course, this is ending up in my comparison video is because the foam stack heights are very similar. The offsets are obviously different, but they are ultimately getting this kind of mid-range foam height in the shoe, which is really good for daily trainers, and it doesn't more or less overcompensate in a way that like a racer would more or less do, where you have too high of a foam and you have some instability. By keeping the shoe kind of lower to the ground, same with the Pegasus Turbo 2, it's just my opinion that you're a little bit more stable to the ground, and ultimately you're just going to have a pretty smooth ride in that sense. So, again, as I mentioned before, with the specs of the Peg Turbo 2, very similar in this case, where in the heel we have about 30 millimeters going in the heel, 22 millimeters in the forefoot, with a stack height offset of about 8 millimeters. It's just the offset, my bad. And of course that's slightly less than the Peg Turbo 2, not too bad at all. Pretty cool overall, I would say. And then of course now let's talk about some of the outsole and midsole stuff. So on the side of the foams, just one type of foam going all the way across, which is this New Balance Fresh Foam. I so far like it. I've described it as a blend of React and Zoom X, where it's got a lot of spring, it's got a lot of good compression and decompression in the shoe, but it's also very stable and responsive in the way that I would like a daily trainer that's going to be a little bit slower to beat. So that's pretty awesome so far. I enjoy that a lot. And I would say, yeah, from the midsole side, it's pretty normal, pretty basic, nothing else too crazy from there. Okay, so let's talk about this Hypo knit upper that's going on in this particular shoe. So my understanding with this is that over time, as you're using the shoe, it's going to be a little bit more malleable and ultimately fixed to the way your foot is snug in the shoe based on how you tie it, based on how wide your foot is. It's like the shoe is going to eventually mold to your actual foot. That's pretty cool overall. I would say the Hypo knit is pretty breathable. Of course, it's very flexible. And there's a couple of other moving parts in this shoe that enable such a flexibility. Now, one of the other things to discuss, of course, is the shoelace pattern. It's just going straight across, standard shoelaces. Pretty cool in my opinion. It's not on the anterior side of the foot, which is not a big deal. Some people really like that overall. Now, this is the part where the Hypo knit is probably working in tandem with a different part, and that's this New Balance shoe collar, like tab back area of the shoe. And I originally thought it would work like Fly Ease, where you just put your foot in and then it would just like snap back. It doesn't really work in that sort of way. What it is I think just like a very, I guess the word I'm going to use is a snug shoe collar that's using a slightly different material with a little bit of flex on it that isn't heavy on your Achilles tendon. And in a way, while you're running, it feels like you just don't have a heel lock, but you actually do because of the way the shoe collar is on the sides. It just, it's a sensation. It's not so much like what's actually happening in reality with your foot, but it's just something that's interesting and it takes a little bit of time to get used to. So I think those are the major specs I can address here right now. Ultimate comparison and contrast. Well, obviously, the shoes have a very similar mid-range foam, which is great. Let me grab this shoe instead. So they have a very mid-range amount of foam. It's not like overly excessive. It's not too little where it feels like more of a natural runner. It's basically a stable everyday trainers that are supposed to just keep you running and going at a pretty consistent pace or whatever you feel comfortable with on that particular day. The difference, of course, is the utilities of where I would use them. So, as I mentioned many times before, the Pegasus Turbo 2 is definitely one of my more everyday tempo style trainers where it's a lot faster if I want it to be faster because of the Zoom X React tandem that's going on in the midsole area of the shoe. But the problem here is that the shoe does not have a great lifespan, at least from the way I've been using it. Now, I've had people on Instagram and like other social media send me pictures of their shoes, but like you gotta understand, like I'm almost at 250 miles, and you gotta look at what my bottoms of these shoes look like. They're almost completely flattened out, and the foam might really start getting flat if I let it. And now this is going to be an issue when I start trying to get into like a 300, 400 mile range, because if I shred this rubber off and I'm stuck with the foams, I might lose the mechanics of the shoe that would ultimately make it very fast. So lifespan is kind of tricky right now, and I think the consensus is that about 250 to 300 miles, the shoe does start running flat, which sucks. We should make a Pegasus Turbo 3 that has a much larger lifespan, and you should put like an inch of carbon plate somewhere on the shoe because it'd be funny. I don't know. It'd be kind of cool to do that, I think. In the New Balance lineup, I'm still experimenting with the lifespan of the shoe. As of right now, I put on just about under 50 miles, and this midfoot area is taking kind of a beat down. But I'm looking at the forefoot area mostly for both of my shoes. And as of right now, the wear doesn't seem to be all too bad. Let me line this up. The wear is not all too bad at just under 50 miles, but it's going to be something I am going to be paying attention to as we're moving on. Now, because of the shoe's weight, it is slightly more than the Pegasus Turbo 2, and because this foam, I'm still experimenting with it on the faster days, I'm going to say that this is currently going to be more of my stable everyday runner, in the sense that I'm not going to try to run fast when I have this shoe quite yet, but there might be a time where if I do have a tempo run and I need something that's going to give me energy in return, I will experiment with this. But right now, that's not the purpose of this shoe in my lineup. But if this shoe does have some fast days that you guys have had with it, definitely leave it in the comments below. I'd like to know if you use this as a tempo trainer and how you guys feel about it. So yeah, I think we're going to end the video here more or less. Basically, the summary here is that both daily trainers are kind of similar in design in terms of the general specs, but like the physical design of the shoe is slightly different. Slightly, like really different. They look completely different. They have a different utility overall. Different brands, of course. And I would say, depending on your utility of where you would like to use that daily trainer, they vary on the spectrum of where you would want to buy this shoe and then use it for what case. So of course, like I said, the New Balance 1080 Fresh Foam version 11, more of a stable everyday run that's kind of slow. Nike Pegasus Turbo 2, you can use it as a daily trainer to go slow, but it also has the potential to go fast with the current lack of shoe life. So I think I'm going to end the video here for now. If you disagree or agree with my assessment on both shoes, just leave it down in the comments below. Let's talk about it. If you guys have like more than 300 plus miles on the Fresh Foam 1080 version 11, tell me what I should be expecting as we're moving along, because I'm really curious, because so far the shoe life is pretty good, but I'm not really going fast in it. So that being said, I'm going to end the video right here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys real soon.